Adam, congratulations being part of a championship. I think growing up, right, you were a Buckeye fan, and now a chance to, be a part of it, as part of the university and the program. Looking back on Monday now, what was that experience like?
I think winning a championship at any level is special, but I think that, like you mentioned, I grew up. I remember the earliest game I remember is like the 96, 97 Rose Bowl, I think it was, with Joe Germain. And I remember being hooked on Ohio State football kind of after that. And then just down the road, I remember the 2002 national championship when they played Miami and pulled off the upset, just the feel of that and what that kind of meant to everybody. And the feeling I had even as a young kid as far as how important that seemed. So to grow up now, be on the other end of it, be 10 years into a career, and finally get that moment, I would say it was very gratifying for a lot of reasons.
If I remember right, you came back to Ohio State the season after the last championship. Is that right?
That's correct.
So you've been chasing this thing a while. I saw you, remember, before the bowl game against Notre Dame. Ironically, that's who you beat for the championship. You've been chasing this for a while, trying to help this program back to that level. That had to be very gratifying as well after having to wait so long too, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. Coming in after the last one, you always assume you're just going to get another one real quick after that. And the way we recruit, the way we bring in talent, you always assume the next one's right around the corner, but you realize how hard it is to win. And, I've been close a few times. In 2020, we obviously made the national championship. We lost to Alabama, and then I lost the Super Bowl with New England. So I was beginning to hope that I wasn't the jinx, and that finally it was good to get the monkey off my back with this one. So important for that reason too.
Absolutely. Tell me, what was this process like going through the playoff with the role you have in the program? I assume the longer season presented some new challenges in as far as keeping guys healthy, getting them conditioned to withstand the extra games.
Yeah, it really started last year after that Missouri loss. We started brainstorming because we said, all right, if the goal is going to be the national championship, we got to start kind of almost periodizing and looking at what's the calendar going to look like. So even from a off-season workout standpoint, in-season practice standpoint, how you monitor guys that have higher risk of injury, how you push and pull when to go harder, when to go easier in practice, all that stuff started months and months and months ago. So you're watching that play out, and sure, there's always adjustments kind of week to week because you don't know what every week's going to bring you as far as new injuries or things that show up in the athletic training room. But between us, our performance staff, our strength staff, it was pretty neat to watch the plan unfold. And it was definitely harder. I told everybody it was by far the most work I feel like I've put into a year in all my years working here, just from a standpoint of man hours and also just from a standpoint of the planning that it took. So you put all that together, there's a huge sigh of relief when it all worked out for the best. And I felt like we were in a pretty good place from a manpower point in that national championship. From a health standpoint, you always are going to have a few things here and there, but we felt like we were able to put our best foot forward and put our best team out on the field for the most part.
Right, and you can't help just the freak injury that happens that's going to end the season. I know the offensive line dealt with some stuff with with Seth going down and a couple other issues, but overall, it did seem like you guys were nearly full go going into that last game.
Yeah, without question, we felt like that. Again, credit to the coaches and the strength staff for everyone kind of being able to come together and consolidate on an idea. And we monitored a lot of things. We modified a lot of things. Those last few weeks of practice didn't look anything like your first few weeks of practice in the season. And that's just because you need different things at that point. There's a lot more of the mental reps and a lot more of the things that way that are less physical because your body's just been through it. And you see that as the season goes on. So you just have to adjust.
I assume the conversations are with Coach Day, Coach Marotti, like what you guys all sit down and say and map this out. Was there a lot of conversation between all you guys together to figure this new path out?
Yeah, that was really, like I said, way back after last bowl season where we kind of had to start putting plans together. And then as the offseason goes on, there's constant meetings. I mean, there's meetings every day between staff members and coaches and everything like that. So it's a constant update of what's working, what's not working, the trends we're seeing. and you try and right the ship before anything bad happens.
Speaking of righting the ship, it was a completely opposite, and it's a different part of righting the ship. But from your perspective, how did things change after the loss to Michigan that allowed you guys to, get refocused and make this run? Because that could have gone south quickly in that first playoff game if the right approach wasn't taken.
Yeah, I think that the guys all, we had the meeting that everyone talks about, and I think there was a lot of honesty and truth kind of expressed by everybody on from the players and coaches standpoint. And I think that everyone agreed that the only way to salvage the season was to win it all. And that kind of the thing everyone said was you can't let a team beat you twice. So yeah, they beat us, but it was going to say, okay, are we going to let that carry over to another loss, whether it was Tennessee or Oregon or any of that. So I think that the leadership on our team, whether it be coaches or players or anyone in between, I think really was what stepped up. That's what helps when you have a veteran team like we did. And everyone said the right thing, put the best foot forward. And it was really impressive the way those practices kind of took off. There was definitely a lull that week after we took that loss. But after that, it was amazing, the energy and kind of the commitment to the process that everyone bought back into.
Absolutely. Before the championship game, too, I heard Coach Day talking about, giving the staff behind the scenes credit. Coach Marotti, you guys, what's it mean to hear him publicly say what it meant for you guys to put a plan in place and carry that out to get them to where they were?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to get, a public pat on the back, obviously. But Coach Day does such a great job of reinforcing the things we do well. He listens to us. He very much is involved and, very much supports the decisions we make. He lets us do our job. And I think that as professionals, that's the number one thing we can ask for, is that let us do our piece, you do your piece. And then we hope that everyone's been, hired and brought in to do that job at the highest level, and that it all works out.
And afterwards, like Coach Day mentioned that the spring is probably going to look different with the longer season. From your perspective, how are things going to look from this day forward as you guys get ready for a new season with whatever you're allowed to share at this point?
Yeah, that's part of that's still a good question. So that planning is obviously still going into effect. But the fact of the matter is we have mid-year freshmen already on campus working out and have been for several weeks. So we got back on Tuesday, and I went into the office on Wednesday for a few hours, because you already have guys that are, whether it's surgeries or banged up from high school, you have work to do. And, you got to start working towards the next season, and those guys deserve the attention that they need. So we're already back at work in some regard, not to the same capacity, but that the new season has started. So we're kind of putting together a calendar of what the next few weeks, months looks like. There'll definitely be small durations, things like spring ball, all that you have to kind of look at. But for the most part, we're back rolling already, if I'm being honest with you.
Crazy to think it's really 365 days a year, so and what would for someone that may not know what your specific role is, I know there's a lot to it, but could you summarize what you really are responsible in doing to get this team ready and keep them healthy, and kind of what you do throughout the different roles you have through the year?
Yeah, I think that it kind of breaks down to the first is like injury prevention. So anything that's out there in the world that can help be used to prevent or try to prevent injury, we try and stay on the front line of that. And that's one of the big pieces of my job, is trying to make sure that I'm always up to date with what is out there and possible. Second part is implementing that stuff. So it's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to put it into action with a team of 100+ guys and make it run smoothly with our strength staff and everyone else on board. Then that last piece is the reactive piece, and that's when injuries happen. It's football, so injuries are going to happen regardless. And as they come, being able to triage those, and if they're short term, hey, can we turn this thing around, and how safely but effectively can we get you back on a field? And if it's a long-term injury, that's where one of my primary roles is as the long-term physical therapist. So those guys that are going to be out for 4-6 months, whatever it is, I'll take them and kind of go through their rehab on a day-to-day basis, try and get them safely again back to the field of play.
Absolutely. And lastly, being from the Ohio Valley, having a chance to represent the Valley, there's not a lot of guys, from the Valley that are with the program. But in addition to you, I know we had a couple players, there with Inky Jones at Steubenville, even Dover with a freshman and Simon Lawrence. And I know Avery Henry from your alma mater, St. Clairsville, still with the team, right? I saw him on the sideline. What's it like, knowing that some guys are kind of from your neck of the woods.
There's definitely a bond with those guys. We always mention the Ohio Valley in some regards, or it's anytime Inky's on the field, I tell him he better be representing Steubenville, or I'm making some sort of comment in that regard. So there's definitely a connection. The fact we're all from the same area, and it's cool. I definitely saw all those guys after the game, and it was just like anything else. It was like a job well done. Like you understand and respect where you came from and where you're at now, and it's pretty cool to look around and take that in.